And the rest, and to close out the day, I should say, let's send it back to Vetti and the boys.
Thank you very much, Fish. I'm happy, personally, to be one of the boys. Of course, congratulations to the Flash Wolves. We do have an interview coming up with Karsa shortly, but in the meantime, let's take a chance to break down that Game 3. Yet another decisive win. This one felt a little more back and forth to me, but no question that Flash Wolves coming out as the superior team here.
I like the fact that Supermassive, they decided to change things up during the draft. They banned away both the Malzahar and the Zyra, basically trying to take Sword Art off of as many playmaking supports as possible, and even still, the bottom lane of Sword Art and Vetti were able to get themselves a 2v2 kill. So it just demonstrates that as individuals, this Flash Wolves, like, I feel like they've got the draft down. Like, they are a very difficult team to ban out. And going up against them, they're not the kind of team that you can just ban away their strong picks. You have to be able to match them with strong picks of your own.
But that's because there are too many strong picks for them now, right? So they've proven if there's two in the support role, you get rid of the Zyra, you get rid of the Malzahar. Well, the only other champion that wasn't there anymore is Syndra, and suddenly Maple's playing the Syndra. So no matter what you ban, there is a fourth champion or a fifth champion.
And it's brutal, right? Because we saw Lee Sin taken away, and that was the big playmaking champion for Karsa. But then he picks up the Rengar. Doesn't matter how many nerfs this champion sees, Karsa not afraid to grab it. Isn't as strong early, admittedly, but continues to make a massive impact. 5-2-5 in the middle of that game, doing just absolute work.
Yeah, he was honestly a monster, getting early ganks off, having pressure, but mostly, and most importantly, working with Maple still. So the 2v2 was one big strength. Even if Sword Art wasn't available, wasn't free to roam as much as he was in the Malzahar games, still the strength is there.
And I want to take a chance to look at that tower dive. We did see some execution for Supermassive trying to force some larger plays here, but just not quite able to do it. And you can see Flash Wolves not afraid to fight under pressure.
I think there were a few errors in terms of the setup, the fact that they lost their wave so quickly, but it's nice to see that Supermassive were at the very least trying to be proactive, because if they were able to successfully force their opponents off the tower, then they're able to at least gain some control over the map. But this is a constant that we're seeing from the Flash Wolves in the way in which they are so reliable in their ability to respond to any kind of move that Supermassive make. They are a team that understands the situation and can react and respond in a way that always ends in their favor.
Yeah, and Maple getting there a little bit late this time around. Still proactivity from Supermassive, but for me, MMD shows up and starts to be that big player when it matters. He's always there on time. His Gragas was solid. And they just have, honestly, when they're all firing, 5 separate carries. Yeah, and when we look at it too, MMB not always the guy that we want to talk about, but is very strong for the team. Had a fantastic Kled game, now coming in big on the Gragas. It looks good for him just about every game so far, and this is a strong start for Flash Wolves. If they wanted to make a statement coming into MSI, hey, we don't need to play in the play-in, we deserve a spot right to get there, they definitely made it today.
And I think that it's difficult to gauge the true strength of the Flash Wolves, because I think that when we look at this matchup in particular, we saw that Supermassive, unfortunately, were just straight up outclassed on an individual level, on their ability to play the map. Flash Wolves are just a better team. So I think that we're still, while it's definitely an indication that this is a good team, it still makes you wonder how well they do stack up. How can they be challenged? Because today I felt like Supermassive could not live up to the challenge.
Just another day in the office for the Flash Wolves, plain and simple. A clean 3-0.
Definitely had it, and it was scary too, because we saw kind of a slower mid-game and then suddenly just explosions of aggression coming out from the Flash Wolves. Pull up this Acer replay right now. You can see when the Flash Wolves want to make a play, they make it happen, even if it looks at the start like it might not work out.
There were so many cool small interactions that made this play so good. The fact that Karsa tanking up a lot of the damage on the front line, then getting himself the heal to be able to back away. And Zeitnot, I feel bad for him because he did everything that he could in a lot of these fights, but when you're going up against an overfed Syndra and the fact that a Gragas is looking to barrel you into the rest of your team, there's only so much you can do.
Little Ash that could not, unfortunately, this time around. And again, mentioned it, strength in different areas of the map. I will still pay a little bit of respect to Supermassive one more time. Zeitnot didn't have a poor performance. We've seen, honestly, a relatively good series from Stomaged, all things considered, perhaps not in this game, but overall he still looked very solid. Like, they still have a lot of positives to take away from this whole set.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, once again, they're not out yet. It is that double elimination bracket. Now they don't have to worry about Flash Wolves, about TSM. They don't have to worry about them yet, at least. Now they just need to focus on the Gigabyte Marines ahead of them. And that feels like a big pressure moment for these guys because, once again, 2 very different styles going head-to-head.
The issue that I can see for Supermassive is that the Gigabyte Marines, emulate a very similar style to that of Flash Wolves. The big difference, I think, between the two is the fact that Flash Wolves are not entirely reliant on this style. It's just a style that they seem to have a preference towards. But the Gigabyte Marines are a little bit more reliant. They do expect Levi to have a good early game. They need him to be a lot of the playmaking and facilitate a lot of the action around the map. And what we're seeing from SuperMassive is, sure, they try to be a little bit proactive, but a lot in terms of their execution is not optimal. So I wonder whether or not they will be able to match this early pressure that the Gigabyte Marines will be looking to try and exert.
And you have to worry if they chose to play this style of game Flash Wolves for the entire series, that because Gigabyte Marines play the same way, there could be a slight mismatch. But what I would also say is that SuperMassive have now just played against the better version of the Gigabyte Marines, right? They play the same way. So going back against them on Saturday is a very real possibility they've learned their lesson and can grow from just this set. Even though it was a 3-0 and they got spanked in 2 of the games, they could still take a lot away.
And we have to expect as well that some of the execution issues may not be as prevalent in that matchup. When we saw the tower dive kind of moving forward, pushing for more on that bottom side of the map, you have to wonder if, from the side of Gigabyte Marines, if they, in that same situation, would have been able to execute so comfortably as the Flash Wolves to kind of mitigate what turned out to be a greater advantage for them.
And saying no is something that the Flash Wolves can definitely do, whereas like perhaps the dive was a bad idea. Flash Wolves might say, not this time, let's set up again, let's try and do it properly. The Gigabyte Marines will do it.
The Gigabyte Marines are a yes team.
They've only got yes, they're just proactive as heck. They will dive that turret, and SuperMassive can actually play towards more consistent tendencies.
Do you think that the things that we praise SuperMassive for in their group stage performance, the patience, the warding, the kind of outmaneuvering opponents in the mid-game, do you think they're going to get a chance to move into that mid-game on even footing, or is this kind of the biggest testing ground for them against Gigabyte Marines?
I think that you just have to play in a way in which you can mitigate the early pressure, right? So for a start, you have to guarantee yourself strong laners. Being able to have the push and being able to have control is extremely important because it gives you vision. And what you really need against Levi is to be able to control the map and see where he is trying to move around the map and set up these early plays. And if you can control him, then you can move into the mid-game where you then have a better chance of winning out on later team fights.
Well, while we have our sights on Saturday, let's take a chance to look back on today's games and today's victories with Shox, who is standing by with an interview with the victorious jungler.
Thank you guys very much. I am joined here by Karsa of the Flash Wolves after a super convincing victory over SuperMassive. You guys were the favorites, but you played out of your mind. If you look at the whole series, why do you think you guys were so much stronger than SuperMassive today?
首先恭喜你们获得刚刚那一场的胜利。那回顾一下这个系列赛，你觉得你们能获得压倒性的胜利的原因是什么？
主要是我们知道对手也是蛮强的一支队伍，然后因为我们知道打他们，我们个人的实力，我们只要自己不出现失误的话，我们就可以获得胜利，所以我们都是确保自己的状态。
So we know that they're a strong team, so we made sure that we didn't make any mistakes, and that led us to victory.
Knowing that you had to come here and play the play-ins to qualify for the main event, how important was it for you to have a convincing win, a 3-0, to give you confidence for the main event?
今年赛制比较不同，有入围赛。那在入围赛能表现那么优异，对你们面对接下来的比赛，对你们的信心有帮助吗？
应该是没有特别有帮助吧，就是我们应该就是能有一个热身的机会，所以我觉得还算是不错。
Not so much on the confidence side, like not much effect, but it did really help us as kind of like a warm-up towards our upcoming games.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, if you look at the year so far, you guys won IM Katowice, you guys dominated in the LMS Spring Split, so a lot of people are looking at you for this tournament. What are the chances of the Flash Wolves?
你们今年获得 IEM 冠军，然后也在春季赛表现非常优异。那你觉得这次闪电狼夺冠的机会有多大？
你说 MSI 冠军吗？
对啊。
看着今年的 SKT 可能10%吧。
Looking at this year's performance, SKT's performance, probably 10%.
Probably 10%, but that's interesting because in the past, you guys have been the team to take games off SKT, and of course they are the absolute favorites. But come on, you have to tell us, what can you show us versus SKT? If anyone's going to do it, it's got to be the Flash Wolves.
你们以往对上 SKT 就是胜场其实是比较多的。那这次闪电狼可以带给我们大家什么样的表现呢？
因为其实我们之前对上 SKT 的时候，我们打之前都没其实也没有那么有信心会赢，就是又是 SKT， 然后头很痛，然后结果上去打不知怎么的就赢了，所以这次我们也是尽力而为。
So in our previous games against SKT, it was also hard, headaches, difficult times, and we won. And this time we'll try our best and definitely win against them.
I'm very looking forward to seeing you guys playing in Rio. Thank you very much. Congratulations, Karsa. Thank you, Christine, for the assistance. And back to you guys.
Thank you, Shocks. I like that. Coming at the end. Well, I like that part, too. I was going to say, I like that he has a calm, cool head going into SKT. He says, we're not going to overestimate ourselves, you know, 10%, kind of low on that spectrum, but definitely taking it calm, cool, collected. But then, of course, he talks about SuperMassive. He's like, yeah, it didn't affect our confidence too much, but good warm-up. Good warm-up for the stage. Like, that is great confidence coming in for the rest of the group.
It really is. And Karsa is an individual. If you ever have the opportunity to meet him, I highly recommend it. He is a super nice guy. He's really friendly. And when we met him at IEM, he was just such a bundle of fun. Like, he doesn't seem this overconfident guy that's convinced that he's the god of the jungle. He's just like, yeah, I love League of Legends and I love playing with the team. And you can tell that he has a lot of fun with his Flash Wolves crew.
You have to call him honest, if nothing else.
Yeah, he's very honest.
It was a 3-0 against the SuperMassive side, so sure, it was absolutely a warm-up.
Always good to hear from him. Of course, to wrap up our day, however, let's review the bracket going into Saturday. With their win today, the LMS's Flash Wolves have promoted to the MSI groups, and even though SuperMassive suffered a loss today, they still have one more chance to join the group stage, and on Saturday, they will take the stage against the GPL's Gigabyte Marines for that last spot in Rio.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's going to be, we've already talked a little bit about how, or at least for me, I think it's going to be favored towards the Gigabyte Marines, not only because I felt that they did actually play very, very well against TSM, but I think that that style seems to be difficult for SuperMassive to deal with. And I don't think during the group stages we actually saw a team properly challenge SuperMassive in terms of the ability to force a lot of early plays.
Yeah, and I think just to echo that, it'll be a battle of Gigabyte Marines against Flash Wolves Light, basically, to see who gets it.
And I'm curious what the shifting point was for you guys, because when we looked back at the group stage performance, initially the predictions were that SuperMassive were probably the stronger team, that Gigabyte Marines group was playing maybe a little bit messier. Is it just that TSM series and this series today that have kind of changed your opinions about both these squads?
This is the first time that we're going to see Group A against Group E from the play-in stages, right? And we're not actually sure how good TSM are compared to Flash Wolves, but from what we saw of the individual teams themselves, the Gigabyte Marines were much more aggressive, and their jungler, to me, was just such a superstar that he was able to keep up with the likes of Svenskeren.
I have to agree with Rusty. It's not so much that we're saying that, you know, Gigabyte Marines necessarily outperformed out of their mind, but I think that they had a very strong performance, and I think that from SuperMassive we're just identifying a few more weaknesses that can be punished. Now, I'm not looking to say that the Gigabyte Marines will be able to as effectively punish them in the same way that the Flash Wolves will, but I think that the Marines emulate a very similar style to the Flash Wolves, and I think that what we've seen today is that under that kind of pressure, under the constant skirmishing that the Gigabyte Marines are likely to try and force, that will be a situation which favors them.
Yeah, well, definitely. We'll have to find out how those two styles clash together in our matchup on Saturday, but that's going to do it from us here. So on behalf of myself, the casters, and the entire live broadcast crew, thanks for watching, and we'll see you guys on Saturday.